Mom sued me for abandoning the family. Then the CIA director testified. She disappeared for years, playing soldier. My mother told the judge, her voice breaking with practiced emotion. Probably AWOL. Abandoned her family for some fantasy life. I sat perfectly still at the defendant's table, watching my mother perform for the courtroom. Patricia Stone had always been good at playing the victim. Today, she'd dressed the part, conservative grey suit, minimal makeup, tissues clutched in her manicured fingers. The grieving mother, abandoned by her ungrateful daughter. The lawsuit was for abandonment and emotional damages. She wanted $500,000 for the years of therapy and suffering caused by my cruel desertion of family obligations. Her lawyer, a shark named Morrison who specialized in family exploitation cases, had painted me as a selfish woman who'd joined the military to escape responsibility, then gone AWOL when things got tough. Miss Stone, Morrison addressed me during his opening statement, refused to attend her brother's wedding, missed her father's funeral, vanished for months at a time without explanation. And when questioned about her service record, she provides nothing. No unit information. No discharge papers. No proof she ever served honorably. The judge, an elderly man named Harrison who'd probably seen every family drama imaginable, seemed sympathetic to my mother's tears. Why wouldn't he be? The evidence looked damning. 5 years of missed holidays. Unanswered calls. An emergency contact form at her father's hospital that listed me as whereabouts unknown. What the court couldn't know, was that I'd been in a detention facility in Belarus during my brother's wedding, maintaining my cover while extracting information from an arms dealer. My father's funeral had coincided with a critical operation in Mumbai that prevented a biological weapons sale. Every abandonment had been a mission that kept American citizens safe. My lawyer, David Reeves, had been provided by the agency. Outwardly, he looked overwhelmed, a public defender out of his depth against Morrison's aggressive tactics. That was intentional. We needed my mother to feel confident, to fully commit her lies to the court record. My daughter, my mother continued on the stand, claims she was serving our country, but she can't even tell us what branch. First it was the Army, then the Marines. She can't keep her lies straight. She dabbed at her eyes. I think she was living on the streets, or worse. Drug addiction runs in families, Your Honor. I felt my jaw tighten at that. My mother knew exactly why I couldn't discuss my work. 7 years ago, when I'd been recruited out of Georgetown's School of Foreign Service, I'd told her as much as I could, that I'd be working for the government, that my work would be classified, that there would be times I couldn't contact her. She'd laughed in my face, called it playing spy games, and told the family I'd joined a cult. Morrison was building to his crescendo. We have here a pattern of abandonment, Your Honor. A daughter who chose fantasy over family, who created elaborate lies rather than fulfill basic familial duties. Mrs. Stone has suffered immeasurable psychological damage. That's when the courtroom door opened. It didn't burst open dramatically. It simply opened with quiet authority, and a man in a charcoal suit walked in. He was unremarkable in appearance, medium height, graying hair, the kind of face you'd forget in a crowd. That was the point. But the way he moved, the way the air seemed to shift around him, made everyone turn. Your Honor, he said, his voice carrying despite its soft tone. I apologize for the interruption. I'm here to testify for Operative Stone. The judge frowned. This is a closed hearing, sir. Are you on the witness list? I am now. The man approached the bench, pulling out a leather folder. Not a wallet, an ID case. He showed it to the judge, whose face immediately paled. Who are you? Judge Harrison asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer would be significant. The man turned slightly, addressing the court reporter. You'll want to stop recording for a moment. Then, back to the judge. That's classified, Your Honor. But I run Langley. The silence was absolute. Even the bailiff had frozen. My mother's face went from confused to terrified in the span of 3 seconds. Langley meant only one thing to anyone who watched the news: CIA headquarters. Morrison found his voice first. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We haven't had time to verify. Verification won't be necessary, the director said calmly. He handed the judge a document. This is a federal authorization to provide limited testimony in this matter. You'll note the signature. The judge's hands trembled slightly as he read. The presidential seal was visible even from where I sat today. Mr. Director, the judge stammered. This is a civil matter. Family court. I don't understand why. Because Operative Stone has been under deep cover for 7 years, the director said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Every absence Mrs. Patricia Stone has catalogued was a classified operation. The wedding she missed. Operative Stone was preventing a terrorist attack in Prague. The funeral, she was extracting a wounded asset from Syria. My mother had gone white. Her tissues fell from nerveless fingers. The director continued, I've reviewed the allegations in this case. Mrs. Stone claims abandonment. The truth is, her daughter has spent 7 years protecting this country, including protecting Mrs. Stone herself, though she'll never know the specifics. This is impossible, Morrison objected. My client's daughter is a... Careful, counselor, the director warned. The next words out of your mouth might constitute a federal crime. Slandering a CIA operative in good standing carries significant penalties. He pulled out another document. Your Honor, this is a letter from the Deputy Director of Operations, confirming that Operative Stone has been on continuous active duty since 2017. Every absence corresponded with critical operations. She has been wounded in service to this country 3 times. She has saved lives, American and Allied, on 4 continents. I watched my mother's face crumble. Not with shame or regret, but with the realization that her lawsuit was evaporating. Furthermore, the director added, the agency has been monitoring this case. We're aware that Mrs. Patricia Stone was informed of her daughter's classified status in 2017. She signed a non-disclosure agreement. By bringing this lawsuit, she's violated that agreement. Morrison looked like he'd been punched. My client never mentioned. No, the director said coldly. She didn't. She also didn't mention the $10,000 monthly payments Operative Stone has been sending to support the family, despite the estrangement. Money that Mrs. Stone has been accepting while publicly claiming abandonment. My mother tried to speak, but only a strangled sound emerged. The judge looked overwhelmed. Director, this is unprecedented. I don't have protocols for this. You do now. The director handed him another document. This is a federal order to dismiss all claims against Operative Stone. Additionally, the Justice Department will be investigating Mrs. Patricia Stone for fraud, violation of federal NDAs, and attempted exploitation of a federal agent. He turned to my mother then, and his unremarkable face became something terrifying. Mrs. Stone, you knew your daughter was serving her country. You knew she couldn't discuss her work. You chose to exploit that silence for financial gain. That ends today. Finally, he looked at me. For the first time since entering, his expression softened slightly. Operative Stone, the agency apologizes for this breach of your cover. Your handler is waiting outside with new documentation. Your current mission is hereby terminated. You're being recalled for reassignment. I nodded once. Understood, sir. The judge, finding his voice, said, case dismissed. With prejudice. Mrs. Patricia Stone, you're remanded to federal custody pending investigation. He banged his gavel as if trying to restore some normalcy to his courtroom. 2 federal agents I hadn't even noticed entered and flanked my mother. She looked at me, her eyes desperate. Diana, please. I'm your mother. I didn't know. You knew, I said quietly, speaking directly to her for the first time. You've known for 7 years. When Dad was dying and asked where I was, you told him I'd abandoned the family, even though you'd received word I was on a classified mission. You let him die thinking I didn't care. My voice stayed level, professional. You took the money I sent every month, money from operations where people died, where I nearly died, and you used it while telling everyone I was a worthless runaway. You tried to profit from my silence. I stood, straightening my blazer. The agency will handle the legal aspects. But as for family, you killed that relationship long before today. Morrison was backing away from the table like my mother had something contagious. The court reporter looked shell-shocked. The bailiff was speaking rapidly into his radio, probably calling for guidance he'd never receive. The director walked with me toward the door. In the hallway, my handler, James, was waiting with a folder, new passport, new identity, new mission probably. Mumbai? I asked quietly. Worse, James replied. Moscow. You fly out tonight. I nodded, already shifting mental gears from Diana Stone, abandoned daughter, to whoever I'd need to be next. As we walked toward the exit, I heard commotion from the courtroom. My mother screaming about her rights, Morrison desperately trying to distance himself from the case. The director paused at the courthouse entrance. You know, Stone, Most operatives never have to face this kind of exposure. You handled it well. Training, sir. He smiled, a rare occurrence, I'd been told. No. Character. Your father would have been proud. I thought about my dad, dying in that hospital bed, asking where his daughter was while my mother poisoned his last thoughts with lies. He died thinking I abandoned him. No, the director said firmly. He died knowing you were serving your country. I made sure of it. I stopped walking. Sir. 3 days before his death, I visited him personally. Told him what I could. Showed him a medal you'd earned but couldn't receive publicly. He wanted you to know he understood. For the first time in 7 years, I felt tears threaten. I blinked them back. Moscow was 12 hours away. There wasn't time for tears. Thank you, sir. The director nodded and walked toward a black SUV that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. Before getting in, he turned back. Stone, after Moscow, you might consider requesting stateside assignment. The agency takes care of its own, but we also understand that some bridges, once burned, need to stay that way. As his vehicle pulled away, James handed me a burner phone. Your siblings have been calling the agency switchboard. Want to explain, apologize, claim they never knew what your mother was doing. I took the phone and dropped it in the nearest trash can. I have a flight to catch. Walking away from that courthouse, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, freedom. Not from duty or service, but from the weight of family who'd never understood that my silence wasn't absence, it was sacrifice. My mother had tried to weaponize my classified life against me, never expecting that the shadows I operated in had their own form of protection. 3 weeks later, from a safe house in Moscow, I read that Patricia Stone had pled guilty to federal charges of fraud and violation of national security protocols. She received 5 years probation and was ordered to pay restitution, every penny I'd sent her over the years. My siblings tried to reach out through various channels, claiming they'd been manipulated, that they wanted to understand. I had James send them a simple message. Your sister died in that courtroom. There's only Operative Stone now. It wasn't true, of course. Diana Stone still existed somewhere beneath the covers and classifications. But she existed for the people who'd earned her trust, her fellow operatives, her handlers, the men and women who understood that sometimes serving your country meant letting your family believe you were lost. My mother had sued me for abandonment. In the end, the federal government had shown her what real abandonment looked like. The complete withdrawal of a daughter she'd never bothered to truly know, replaced by an operative she'd never be allowed to contact again. As Moscow snow began to fall, I prepared for another mission, another identity, another service performed in shadows. Somewhere in federal custody, my mother was learning that some silences are sacred, and breaking them comes with a price higher than any lawsuit could ever claim. The director had been right about one thing. Some bridges, once burned, provided the best light to see the path forward.